Watching a bunch of mixing tutorials online is holding your music back from what it could be. In fact, learning more about mixing might actually be making your music sound worse. And trust me, I've been there. I was in a rut where my music wasn't getting any better for years. And I'm going to explain something in this video. Now, I'm not saying before you run to the comments and say, oh, he's saying mixing is not important. It's very important, but it's like 80% of the song. There's a lot more to this than just mixing, and I'm going to explain this in a story. So years ago, I had a mentor who's an incredibly talented producer, incredible musician, and he had this really awesome studio inside of his apartment. And in fact, he had like Burl and Neve and API and UA and like all of these like really awesome, like if you know what any of those brands are, you know that he spent some money in his studio. Stuff sounded great. Everything was really, really awesome. And he was showing me some mixing tips on acoustic guitar. He had this acoustic guitar track, and he was showing me the plugins that he was using and some of the effects that he was using and how he was using this specific EQ curve and how it was making it sound so much better. And he was showing me with everything on and then with everything off, and was showing me the difference. Now, my mind was blown, but it wasn't blown at the fact that his mixing was making the guitar sound better. That was still very impressive, don't get me wrong. It made a massive difference. But what blew my mind was his unmixed guitar sounded better than my mixed guitar. How is he getting it to sound so good? So much better than mine. Like leaps and bounds better than mine without even touching a plugin, without even touching anything at all. And so I had to ask him. I said, hey, this is great, by the way, loving this, but like that, how did you do that? How did you get it to sound that good before anything else? And he goes, oh man, he goes, I just, I put the mic up right around the 12th fret, and had a couple inches back, and, we picked some strings that sounded good, and I had a good player in there. We were testing out different picks, and I'm like, whoa, hold up. You mic'd the acoustic guitar? Like the one that's in the corner? Because that's acoustic electric. I didn't just plug it in. He's like, oh no, you don't plug it in. He said, when you're trying to record in the studio like this, most of the time you want to record it with like an actual mic, capture the actual guitar itself. And it like blew my mind. I had no idea. I didn't even think to question it. And it just blew my mind at how great it sounded at the source. And so then I was obsessed. How do I get things to sound so good before I even go into the mixing phase? And so your music is probably somewhere, and it can fluctuate, but it's probably somewhere around here, right? Like 1, complete beginner noob, like 2 to 3, like you're trying to have some experience, but you're watching these tutorials online and you're trying to get your music to sound better. I know because I was right where you are right now. And the thing is, watching these mixing tutorials got you from a 1 to a 2. Or maybe it got you from a 1 to a 3. But it's not going to be the thing that gets you to a 5 or that gets you to an 8 or even a 10. I'll let you know when I get to a 10. I'll let you know. But it's not going to be the thing that gets you to the next level, because the plane that got you off the ground is not going to be the same plane that gets you to California. The first vehicle you ever owned was enough to get you to your job. Well, if you're anything like me, I had this old 2003 Ford Ranger, and I think it was 2001, and the thing barely passed inspection. Barely. And it got me to my first job. I spent $600 on the truck. It's not what I drive now. And in fact, I've been able to work my way up. I got a job, then I was able to pay for more things, and I was able to get a car, and that would drive me back and forth to work. And now I could go on a long distance trip. I would not go on a long distance trip with that truck, but I had to have that truck to get me to the next level, to get me to my job so I could pay for more, right? So mixing can take your music from a 1 to a 2 or a 1 to a 3. And the thing is, you got an instant win. You learned a couple mixing tricks, you learned a couple EQ curves, you learned a couple whatever, and it blew your mind and you thought, this is it. This is what mixing does. This is how to take my music to the next level. And you're not wrong. Mixing is important, but it's 20%. It can get you from a 1 to a 2 or 1 to a 3 because it is only 20%. But in order to get from a 3 to a 5 or an 8, there's a lot more involved. And so I want to kind of show this off over here, right here. This is like the pipeline of music production. And there's a lot to this. In fact, every single part of this pipeline is so important. There's individual specific jobs for them in the industry. It's mind-blowing. So first and foremost is songwriting. Before you can even mix a song, before you can master a song, before you can do anything at all, you have to write the song. I mean, it makes sense, but there's a lot to songwriting. There's music theory. There's stuff that I still don't even know, and I've been a musician for like 15, 18 years now. It's nuts. So Songwriting is a very, very important skill. And in fact, it's so important that there's people that just do songwriting, and that's all they do all day long. They write songs. And in fact, if you take a look on Spotify's top 50, global top 50 right now, or United States top 50 or whatever, you're going to see when you go to, let me look at the song credits, you're going to see probably 3 to 5 names just on songwriting alone. Like, who wrote this song? Probably at least 3 to 5 names. Go look, probably even more. So there are so many hands trying to flesh out that song and make it the best it possibly can be. A great song. You should be able to take a great song and just perform it live, and it should just already be a banger. People should be watching your videos in the future and looking back at when you were playing, like the local bars or whatever, or you were playing like the local live venues, and they were like, man, it sounded so good then too. That's how good your song should be before you even consider going on to the next level. So the next level is producing. And this is where I spend the majority of my time. So this is me personally. I work with artists all over the world. I help them write songs, kind of, but most of the time I actually help them produce. So they have a song idea that they come to me with. They have like scratch tracks, and they have maybe a piano part and some stuff, and then I spend most of my time producing it out. So, but they've already got basically the song written, and so then we spend time producing it. Next up is sound design. This is the sounds that we choose. This is the actual recording process. This is working in sound design as far as synthesis goes. If you have synth patches, especially if you're in EDM and pop and things like that, all that's really important. And so we have 3 steps, which, by the way, each one of these steps, an individual person has there's a person in the industry that just does sound design. There's a person in the industry that just does producing. There's a person in the industry that just does songwriting. And so before we even get to mixing, we haven't even got there yet, by the way, all of this had to take place. And all of this, there are individual jobs for in the music industry. This is how important everything else is. Mixing could take your stuff to the next level, like from a 1 to a 2 or 1 to a 3, but it's not going to take it the rest of the way. What's going to take it the rest of the way is great songwriting, great production, great sound design. Now we're on to mixing, which, by the way, mixing is extremely important. I'm not one of those guys that says you should, don't worry about mixing, stop mixing and stuff. I'm not one of those guys that says you should stop mixing at all. And I know there's a bunch of people on the internet that say that. And to be fair, they're not wrong in their space. Maybe they're just producing. I'm just saying all of this is important. Each step is important. Then you go from mixing to mastering. And then from mastering, you can go on to promotion and all that other fun stuff. And I'm not even going to get into that today because it doesn't matter. All I'm saying is, from songwriting, producing, sound design, mixing, mastering, every step of the process is like a pipeline. And each place has to be in place, or in order. Each one has to be in order for the song to flow down the pipe. It all has to be in order. Songwriting, production, sound design, mixing, mastering. Sound design and production go really close, really hand in hand. And so going through this entire process, and even production and songwriting, because there's arrangement and all that other fun stuff in there, they all tie closely with one another, but each one has to go to the next and to the next before you have a final polished song. And spending 20% of your time mixing is really that. I spend 20% of my time mixing, maybe even less than that. I spend a very short amount of time mixing. I spend most of my time. The 80% is right here. 80% of my time is spent producing, playing with sound design, and songwriting. And then the remaining 20% is from here to here, mixing and mastering. I hope this video was helpful. If you want to actually know how a full production sounds like, then I have a complete mix breakdown of one of my songs. It will be down in the link down in the description below. You can click on that, and I give an entire walkthrough of one of my productions and how things sound even before mixing. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully you got some value out of this video. And if you got value out of this video, you're probably going to love this one here. It's also on my channel. See you later, and as always, go create.